Welcome back for the 5th episode of GradeATalks. I'm so happy that you all are back here with me. I hope that I am reaching you all in good health, good faith, and a calm, peaceful soul. I've missed you all. I know it's been forever, but I'm back and I'm better than ever. Today, I'll be talking about prominent figures within Black history. It's something that I really care about. I love my community and I love my rich culture. My top 3 favorites of all time are Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, and Fred Hampton. These men were so influential in their stance. They were very firm and very assertive with their mission for Black people. They were Black nationalists. They were Pan-Africanists. And what that means is they were all for the betterment of Black people by Black people. You know how you got FUBU, for us, by us? They were FUBU long before FUBU ever hit the shelves. They were all about Black people building themselves up, and that resonates within me today. I don't feel as though we should look for anyone else to solve our issues other than ourselves. And these 3 men were all about that, and I respect that, I love that, and I value that. Moving to the great Detroit Red, Malcolm X, born May 19th, 1925, and he was assassinated February 21st, 1965. Malcolm X was born to a Garveyite. His father was an avid follower of Marcus Garvey. He worked alongside Marcus Garvey. Again, Marcus Garvey was a Black nationalist, all about the Black man doing for himself, protecting his people, building himself up politically and economically. And it made sense that Malcolm X evolved into the man that he was because it was inbred in him at a very young age. His father was killed by a white mob, the KKK, Ku Klux Klan. The way they killed this man was so barbaric. Like, they tied him down to a railroad track and let the train run over him and kill him. Days after, they attempted to blow his house up with his family in there. Young Malcolm X saw the exploitation of Black people and the dehumanization of Black people at a very young age. His mother was sent off to an insane asylum, and he was sent off to an orphanage. He was ironically raised for a great deal of his life by a white woman, and he was around a white family. In his autobiography, he stated that he was very aware of who he was very early on because his environment reminded him of it daily. He further went on to state that when he was just in elementary school, he told his teacher he wanted to be a lawyer, and she told him that he was basically out of his mind. That was not a job that a Black man could occupy. Thank God that teacher was wrong. He had a few tumultuous years in his life early on. He was into the streets a lot. He was into a lot of criminal activity, didn't really respect women. He said he didn't really respect himself. He was very selfish, cared only for himself. So when you see the evolution of this man, it attributes to his father. It attributes to the Garveyism and just the want and the willingness to change, to be better, to seek knowledge of oneself, to be better. When he was in prison, he converted to the Nation of Islam, and he was following under the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. When he got out of prison, he continued his journey within the Nation of Islam, became a prominent figure within it. He was a minister. He was a human civil rights activist. And back then, like today, but worse back then, of course, if you were a Black person that took a stance and wanted to do better for your people, you were automatically deemed as a threat. He went on to do lectures at colleges such as Berkeley. I advise any Black person to go watch Malcolm X's lectures at Berkeley University. He was on a panel with one other Black educator, and a white interviewer, and it was an amazing interview. He also had some controversial speeches. One being, the by any means necessary, where he took the stance and said that I am not for any black person causing any strife in anyone's life. I'm not for a black man initiating any drama, jeopardizing anyone's life. However, if a white person approaches a black person trying to harm them or their family, that black man has every right to protect himself by any means necessary. And that's something that I feel we need to embrace in our culture. There's nothing wrong with protecting yourself. There's nothing wrong with protecting your black women. There's nothing wrong with protecting black men. And that's something else that Malcolm X said. He was like, one day is going to come a time where a black man looks at another black man like his brother. A black man looks at another black woman like his sister. And when that time comes and when black people unify, that is going to be something for the world to see. We have to view each other as valuable, and we have to view each other as family, because it matters. It truly does matter. Malcolm X went on to break barriers, and a lot of the things that he spoke on 60 years ago are still prevalent today. A lot of the things that he spoke on are still prevalent today. How we live in a society where on the outside, it seems as though some strides have been taken, some accomplishments have been made, but no really big significant, accomplishments have been taking place to put black people in a more economic or political stance than we were 60 odd years ago. We still have black people in spaces, and Malcolm X spoke on that many years ago. A lot of the black politics that we have, can't really trust them. Malcolm X said in his Berkeley lecture that any black political figure that surrounds themselves with majority white people can't be trusted. And he also said that the people that the media display to be the worst people are often not the worst people. Media has the power of influence. It can make the wolf look like the sheep and the sheep look like the wolf. So Malcolm X is just one of my favorite civil rights activists. I absolutely love him. Me growing up in little old Stuttgart, population under 10,000, I was conditioned to believe that Malcolm X was the most radical, irrational threat. And he actually was not. Very educated, very articulate, a strong black man who understood his responsibility to his people, because what's a life worth living if you can't live it limitless? When I didn't really understand who Malcolm X truly was until I went to college. And I remember being at the University of Central Arkansas in Conway, Arkansas, and I went to African American Studies. That was a course. I was so excited. I was like, I'm about to go into this class and I'm about to learn so much. I'm so excited. I'm embarking on this journey of, obtaining my blackness and learning more, because I didn't learn what I needed to learn when I was in grade school, because they don't tell you what you need to learn. They tell you what they want you to know. And I wanted to know what people didn't want me to know, because I didn't trust half of the things that those teachers in Stuttgart were teaching me as far as history went. And I challenged it a lot, and my mama had to hear about it during parent-teacher conference. So, surprise, surprise. But I remember going to African American Studies class at UCA, and ironically, the professor there was a white man from the North. And I remember I walked into the class. I'm like, okay, where is this black teacher at? And it was like a little short white man. I was like, you the professor for African American Studies? What does Conway have going on? I was a little astounded, but it was actually a very good course. I learned a lot. I was fortunate enough to actually get to know this professor, and he enlightened me on his views. He was a huge fan of Malcolm X, and he encouraged me to do my own individual research on Malcolm X. That's where I read the autobiography of Malcolm X. It really just opened a third eye for me. I saw things very differently. I feel like once you are exposed to certain things, you can never unsee it. And so for the past few years, I have been, immersed in Pan-African Garveyism, Pan-Africanist, and what it entails. And what it entails in general is the betterment of black people, by black people, for black people. Malcolm X is one of the most important figures to me, and unfortunately, we've been taught to think that his ways were too militant. It's like the wolf complaining about how the sheep choose to defend themselves. So I really hope you all go out and seek your own knowledge about who he was, because Malcolm X was an amazing, amazing black man, and it would be remiss of us not to keep his legacy alive. Okay, and now we're talking about Marcus Messiah Garvey, which is perfect because, like I told you all, Malcolm X was an avid follower of Garveyism, which Marcus Garvey created in 1914 when he came over to the States and he created the Pan-African movement, which was set to connect the African diaspora to Africa, which means every black country in the world, because Marcus Garvey stated that there are more black and brown people in the world than white people. So it only makes sense for the majority, not what we see in the United States. We believe the hype that African Americans are the minority, when in fact, there are more African and brown people in the world. So Marcus Garvey's ideology was, why not connect all of these people together? Because we have more power in numbers. Born August 17th, 1887, died June 10th, 1940. He set off a continental shift in black mental health, black esteem. It was so many different aspects that Garveyism affected across the black diaspora. He was credited with reinstilling the self-worth and the sense of pride in being black, because you have to think about it. Think about the context and the era in which he came. He was born in Jamaica, came over to the States. He was around racism, slavery, all of that. His parents told him about these things. His grandparents told him about their experiences. He was born during the Reconstruction era. Came over to the United States. He saw that black people were so ashamed of themselves. He saw that black skin was worn with a sense of shame. We were seen as cattle and 3/5 of a human just 15, 20 odd years before. So black people's self-esteem and the way they felt, they had no racial pride. Marcus Garvey is credited for reinstilling that racial pride in black people, and for also advocating for black people to seek their true identity. He went on to say, a people not aware of their true history is like a tree with no roots. You have no grounding. Marcus Garvey inspired so many different movements within black history. He went on to, during his reign, black people were coming together, unifying communities. They were building themselves up. They were economically thriving. Keep in mind, Black Wall Street. That was during Marcus Garvey's movement. Black people were coming together. The children and grandchildren of slaves, parents had no education, coming together, creating these facilities, serving their people, for us, by us. Marcus Garvey is the president of reinstating the black pride, Garveyism, Pan-Africanism. And this resonates within me today because I feel as though that ideology is one that we need to take on now. And unfortunately for us, a lot of our prominent figures in history that set off a chain reaction of implementing tactics to elevate the life experience of African Americans, they were either deported, like Marcus Garvey was in 1927, or the powers that be had them assassinated, like Malcolm X in 1965. So you see a common denominator in all of these men's demise it's seeking power and betterment for their people. All they wanted was economic, political power. And America said, you Negroes not getting that. Marcus Garvey had to be on my list of my top 3 favorite historical figures within the Black diaspora, because these people took on a stance that they knew would potentially kill them, that they knew would potentially bankrupt them, and they didn't care about it because they were for their people. I feel like we should be more so like they were for our people, because like Marcus Garvey said, you're stronger in numbers. The divide and conquer method, we can see the after effects today. There's no unification amongst our community, really. And if it is, it's not in great numbers. We need to implement some of those Garveyite ways into how we see one another, into how we feel about ourselves. Marcus Garvey is one of the reasons why I love my Blackness. I seek truth within my history, in my Blackness, and I have a sense of pride about who I am, because the way we were conditioned to believe we are isn't who we truly are. So make sure that you all look into Marcus Garvey. He created the UINA, Universal Negro Improvement Association, and that was such a significant program for Black people back then, and it became so powerful, and the Black people were thriving so well that they deported the man back to Jamaica in 1927. Think about it. He was only here for 13 years. 13 years, came up to the United States, made pivotal changes, had Black people unifying together. It was an electrifying movement. Think about it. What is so bad about Black people having a sense of pride in themselves, about Black people put their people first, that threatens and intimidates the white society that we live in? What is it about Black unification that intimidates Western culture? That's a rhetorical question. We're more powerful in numbers. Let's do better, Black people, because our ancestors paved the way, and we need to continue the marathon. Now on to one of the youngest and prominent figures in Black history, and one of my favorites. I don't know if you all are aware of the movie Judas and the Black Messiah, but this movie was particularly dedicated to Fred Hampton, born August 30th, 1948, and he died at the age of 21 in his sleep at 4:30 in the morning, December 4th, 1969. I don't know if you all are aware of who J. Edgar Hoover is. He was supposedly a mulatto, which means that he was mixed and was passing for white. That's one of the conspiracies around him, but he was also the director of the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and Fred Hampton was his worst nightmare, a real big headache. Such a big headache that he implemented a plan to completely destroy him. He hired William O'Neill, who was a criminal, to infiltrate into the Black Panthers Party in Illinois, where Fred Hampton was the deputy chairman, and basically that aided in his demise. William O'Neill gave the FBI a blueprint of Fred Hampton's apartment in Chicago, Illinois, and gave him some medication to sedate him somewhat. And this man was in the bed sleeping with his pregnant wife, and they came in there and shot him in his sleep. A couple other Black Panthers were assassinated that night too. But they shot that man at the age of 21 in his sleep at 4:30 in the morning while he was in bed with his wife, who was pregnant with their first child. So that just goes to show that white supremacy and racism has no boundaries. No boundaries. Every Black person that took a stance during the Civil Rights era shot down. Fred Hampton, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey deported. 40 years before these chain of events occurred. Any black person that took a stance, any black person that said, you know what, I could, delusion myself into believing that this was the life that was for me, but I don't believe it that way because I see the smoke from the mirrors. I see that you all are trying to delusion me with the idea that this is the best life that I can achieve, that this is how the Bible states that black people are supposed to live, that the Bible states that white people are supposed to be in power and oppressing me and killing my people and lynching my people. Think about everything that happened within that time. You got your Emmett Tills, it's just so much. And so they had him murdered at 21 years old. And it's so unfortunate because he was so powerful. I don't know if you all are aware, but he was the deputy chairman of the Black Panthers in Chicago, Illinois. And the Black Panthers were so significant, especially during that time, because they would actually fight fire with fire. It was many instances where Black Panthers would come to organizations, events, and be the protection and the security for black people. It was many situations that occurred where they were shooting fire back at the police officers. That is a very powerful group of people. And J. Edgar Hoover could not fathom the thought of black people confronting racism and protecting their people. Like, how dare you shoot back at my police and not let them harass your black ass? This is America. Welcome to it. Fred Hampton. And one of my favorite quotes by him, he said that he knew he was going to die doing what he was supposed to do. He was all for his people, and that man was willing to die for his people, and he died at 21. I'm 29 years old now. I couldn't imagine dying that young. Your life hasn't even started. You see a 21-year-old now and you'd be like, oh, you haven't even lived. This man was such a good orator. He has such charisma with the black people. He built them up. He made them imagine a life beyond oppression, a life where black people are unifying together and creating their own paradise on heaven. Because, the Bible will make you feel as though black people can't get their heaven until they go to heaven, while everyone else has their heaven here on earth. These three prominent figures in black history resonate deeply with me on a visceral level because I see a lot of the things that they talked about 60 odd years ago still prevalent today, still occurring today. Malcolm X's stance on the trickery within the government and politics, how a black person really shouldn't trust many political figures because they all have similar agendas. That's still prevalent today. You have people who are divided when it comes to Democrat or Republican when really they all work together. You got to see the smoke from the mirrors. Marcus Garvey taking the stance and saying, you know what? We cannot look at our oppressors, the people who benefited off of us being systemically oppressed, the people who benefited off our ancestors' 400 years of free labor. We cannot look at those people, the Rockefellers, the Carnegie Railroad companies, Firestone tire companies, all of these Fortune 500 companies that were created off free labor of black people, slavery. You should look that up. That's very true. Men lie, women lie. Numbers don't lie. And if they do lie, them people in the government change that shit. So I'm telling y'all, we really have to look at things for what they are and not for what we've deluded ourselves into thinking that they are. The ideologies of these men are still significant today. We still have racism going on. There's still a lot of disproportions amongst economics in the political realm of this Western culture and civilization that we think is just the best thing since sliced bread. America has a lot of issues, and I'm one to talk about them because my ancestors were bold enough to talk about them, and they lived in a much dire circumstances than I do. And the fact that they were willing to sacrifice their life so that I could have a better life, it would be remiss of us not to keep their legacy alive. it would be remiss of us to act as though these prominent figures never existed. And we need to implement those ideologies within our lifestyles, because if people are being murdered at 39 years old, Malcolm X 21, Fred Hampton, if people are being murdered, that lets you know that there is ever a time where Black people unify. That is powerful. Like Malcolm X said, like Marcus Garvey said, we are more powerful in numbers. Happy Black History Month. And now on to everybody's business. You know, this is where we discuss current events, things that are prevalent in society, and stuff that I just want to talk about. I'll talk about anything that I care about. Shay has been on a roll, honey. He's been bringing all of these Black figures to his show. And I don't know what it is about that chair that make people just open their mouth up and just tell everybody's business. But I'm all for it. Monique was one of my favorite interviews, other than the Cat Williams. I really enjoyed that one too. But they're both just enlightening the world and inspiring people like me to just tell their truths. And not only that, you know, Cat Williams set the tone in January, and then you had Jay-Z go to the Grammys and just talk about them people on their stage, got their award, drank his drink out of it, and then he dipped out. That's some boss shit. I'm trying to be like that one day. Big ups, ho. You feel me? So in the spirit of truth-telling, I felt inclined to, tell my own truth. And being that this is Black History Month and y'all love to make us feel like our history began with slavery, let me tell y'all about a time I actually felt like a slave. And this is in 2023. So picture this. October, homecoming. I'm homecoming queen when I was in high school. So, I go down there and, I'm just socializing with people. I go to a party for class of 2013. It's their 10-year class reunion. I'm there amongst people who I grew up with. It's all good love. The venue that we are located in is owned by my family. I feel safe, right? No. I go to the bar. I order a drink. I go back with my girls. We're standing on the dance floor. I'm not gyrating or anything. I'm just, posted up, vibing, looking cute. I see a group of people that I went to high school with. Keep in mind, 2013, I graduated in 2012. So I was in high school with these people. When I was a senior, they were a junior. I walk up to them. Hey, guys. Oh, my God. Hey, Ariel. It's all good things. Benign talk. Nothing to it. I walk away. I go back to my crew. All of a sudden, I feel a gnarly little hand just creep between my cheeks, trying to grab me by I got Donald Trump. Who would Donald Trump a Black woman in this part of Stuttgart? I'm going to tell you who did that. It was a white guy. So I was accosted at this party. Ironically, his name is Hunter, and he was definitely displaying predatory behavior. Donald Trump and people. Hunter is a white guy from Stuttgart. He's a year under me. And I saw him at that party that night. I was surprised. I was like, this is the only white guy in this party full of Black people. What is he doing here? And then for you to walk up to a Black woman and grab her by the in your Donald Trump fashion, very distasteful. And then to add insult to injury, people, he looks like Donald Trump. The only thing missing is that Cheeto head. That's the only thing. Face looked the same. All that extra meat on his face, all of that looks the same. And I turned around because I was in complete disbelief. Keep in mind, all the Black men that I've engaged with that night, I've seen them, I've talked to them, I'm walking by, they're giving me my compliments. Ariel, you look beautiful tonight. Completely respectful. They're not touching on me. They're not grabbing on me. They're not doing anything disrespectful. It's all in taste. You got this one white guy. He literally walks up behind me and cuffs my vagina. I was appalled. I turned around in complete disbelief, like, what the are you doing? His response was the most entitled response I've ever heard in my life. This mother effer said, I've been wanting to do that since I was in 10th grade. I said, well, baby, you're not in 10th grade no more. And I'm 29 fucking years old with 3 children and 2 degrees, and I'm in my career. Don't ever disrespect me like that. I'm thinking, okay, he's not going to do it no more. I done set everything straight. He's not going to touch me again. I feel so violated. I'm over here like, you're in the hood of Stuttgart. You will get your ass beat. I have cousins in here. This is not where you want to do that at. This is not cool. This territory does not cater to that type of behavior. You're tripping. This man continued to follow me around, harassed me. Sometimes it's a problem inviting people to the cookout, especially when they're overly entitled and they still have that mindset that they're invincible. Nothing can do, you can't do anything to them. They're untouchable. You are not untouchable. You're a human being. And the black men that were in his crew that brought him to the party, they were also his classmates. And one in particular, I was so infuriated with him because I grew up with this guy. Our mothers were at one point very close. I saw him growing up. I was around him. I was in his mom's home. He was kikiing, and I'm like, Draylon, nothing about this is funny. Nothing about this is funny. I was like, that was very disrespectful. Like, you need to get him. And Draylon was like, Ariel, like, you know, it's okay. It's not okay. You know what that reminded me of? I felt like a slave. I felt like Hunter was a plantation owner. And I felt like Draylon was a house Negro. Because house Negroes will go to bat to try to justify the actions of their master. They'll go so far to say, Master, our house burning down. And that's exactly what Malcolm X said. You have field Negroes and you have house Negroes. And that day, let me know, Draylon was a house Negro. You see this black woman being harassed by this white dude, and you didn't take no stance to say, hey, bro, calm down. Like, don't do that. You know, because naturally it should click in your head. This a grown woman. I grew up with this girl. And not only that, she a black woman. We have to protect our own. I was so happy. Thank God for Taylor Daniels. He came. This is another person that graduated in 2013. He was the only black man that took a stance and he told Hunter, he said, hey, bro, like, I don't watch this woman tell you plenty of times to leave her alone, and you still following her around, you still doing stuff like leave her alone. And it was only at that time that he stopped, which let me know that if his posse would have said something, he would have stopped a long time ago. He did what he did because he felt like nobody would say anything. Black women are the least protected race. And I told Draylon them that. I said, you know, this is a problem. I said, the fact that you're trying to justify the actions of another man, I said, you would never want anyone to do your sisters like that. What about your mother? What about if you had a daughter? You have nieces? Do you think that's okay? And I said, do you think that you would be able to go to the country club and grab a white girl like that and you make it home? They'll Emmett Till your black ass. Sometimes we encourage their entitlement. Sometimes we encourage their entitlement by what we don't do, by what we don't stop, by who we don't protect. Black people have to start looking at every black person like someone of value, someone to be protected. I never received an apology about that. And matter of fact, a couple days later, I go to my Instagram, look who in my Instagram DMs coming on one of my stories. Oh, God damn it, Ariel. Just lustful, barbaric energy. And then I saw a couple of days ago, this man is married. So not only are you out here Donald Trumping people, you a married man out here Donald Trumping people. You Donald Trump for real. I said all that to say, a lot of the issues in our community can be fixed by our community. We need to take a stance for that. I felt so violated. I literally felt like a slave. I remember I harbored that feeling for so long. And then one day I just called my dad and I let him know how I felt. And my dad was completely disgusted with the entire situation. And I've never felt that just low. Because it's one thing to be touched. But you a white man touching on me. Entitlement is real. Stop bringing everyone to the cookout. Everyone does not deserve that opportunity to occupy that space amongst black people. We have to start being very, very selective with who we allow in our spaces. Because that still bothers me to this day. And I feel like a little slave. And it's 2024 now, but this occurred in 2023. And I felt hopeless, defenseless. Because on one hand, I'm like, woof. When in Rome, do as the Romans. Let me reciprocate that energy. But on the other hand, I'm a black woman. And I have a career. And I know that when some people do things, they're not looked at as the same. The violation isn't perceived the same. And that's the world we live in. So I would say to all my black people, again, happy Black History Month. Let's do better. When you see a black woman, when you see a black man, regardless if they're your relatives or not, see value in them. Let's stop looking at ourselves as if we're invaluable people. There's a lot of value in us. We need to love one another. We need to unify. And we need to be a people that our ancestors can be proud of, because we have a lot of work to do. But if they can do it in the times that they were coming up, we have no excuse. Let's do better, people. Our ancestors are dependent on us. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in to GradeATalks. If you're interested in any of the figures that I commented on earlier, please feel free to hit the links below. It'll take you to articles and videos so that you can further your knowledge on these people, because you need to know about these men. They were too big, they were too important for us to let their legacy die. In honor of Black History Month, I would love to know who you all feel are the best African American historical figures in our history. Thank you so much. Have a great night. Peace.